Okay, and it's on.
Okay, so remember that this time, even if we mess up.
Yeah, never cutting again.
Yeah, never cut. Okay. No silence. Hello, everybody in the podcast universe. This is Plant Daddy's podcast, serving you intersectional horticulture. I'm Matthew.
And I'm Steven.
We are here as a complete off topic. This is not about plants today.
No.
This is about intersectionality. Because we just had Pride.
Yeah, so I was thinking like we could call this like the Pride Recover cast. There should be some kind of snappy name for this, but I feel like recovery is part of today for me.
Yeah. Yesterday I hosted a rejuvenation brunch.
Yes.
Which got us back into the ability to people again.
Coffee and
cornmeal pancakes, which were fantastic.
I've had those before. They're really good.
Yeah, and I made a blueberry compote with creme de violette and lemon juice.
Yes.
I was a little heavy-handed on the creme de violette, so it kind of tasted like perfume.
You've been very into violet liqueur.
Oh, it's my favorite.
Yeah.
Someday I'm going to have an episode where I just go on a plant boner expedition about Viola odorata. That is a special plant to me. And many other people, including Queen Victoria and Josephine Bonaparte.
Yes.
We'll talk about that later. That's for another episode.
This is already a very Friday episode.
It is. There was so much bacon at our rejuvenation brunch. If you are not already doing this and you make bacon, do it in your oven. It is so much better than doing it in a skillet. The mess is less. The bacon is evenly crisp. You don't get that weird curling effect so that it doesn't lay flat, which I guess is more important if you're making BLTs than just having it with breakfast.
So right now I'm just saying yes, I cook so rarely that I feel bad for how lonely Matthew must feel when he's just having that bacon conversation. I just glazed over, became...
He just went to his own personal space.
Yeah, I was sort of organizing a junk drawer, in my mind, guessing what might be in the junk drawer. Yeah, but I did enjoy bacon as well. I went to this cool rooftop brunch that my friends throw every year. And I think the bacon was meant as a garnish for their Bloody Mary bar, but I just was sort of pretending to put it in the Bloody Mary and then eating it. I think everyone else was.
Was it one of those things you eat one, then pick one up to put in your Bloody Mary,
just
eat another one?
Oh, that's a good... See, what I was doing is I was just sort of quickly stirring my Bloody Mary with it and then immediately eat it. Because at least it was it reached it. I mean, it was in the drink for a short time.
Yeah, but I don't know why you'd want to dip bacon in a drink because your Bloody Mary's cold and bacon grease gets hard when it's cold and then greasy. And if you're going to have bacon that is a little limp, has some placidity to it, I think that you need it to be warm.
Yeah, and for me, all of this is alien. I'm a sweet morning food person. I'm really never savory.
Well,
I will do it. So, but then I'm bacon. I don't hate it, but I don't get the obsession really. So for me, I'm it's like fries. I mean, crispy is better. I don't know.
My whole thing on brunch and breakfast in general is that I like the sweet stuff and I like the salty. And so the key is you go to both extremes. You have salty ass bacon, and you pair that with pancakes covered in sweet blueberries.
Yes, that all sounds right to me.
Yeah, and then that way, as you start to get diabetes, you counter it with high blood pressure.
Yeah.
Are those the health concerns associated with sodium and sugar?
Okay, we can edit this all out. All right, I am now tempted to stop recording again.
Stephen might have gotten contact high. But the reason that we're talking so much about breakfast and belaboring the topic is because brunch is the gay meal. And it was Pride weekend, so everyone has to do brunch. That's just what you have to do.
That is kind of what it felt like. I mean, I just ended up going to them, but I mean, if everyone I think was at brunch. How was your Pride overall? Would you say?
To be honest, overall it was fine, but I think that I might be aging out of this. Or, well, no, I don't want to make this about age. this might have been one of the last prides that I really tried to go out and do things. Um, yeah,
Wow,
and
I laugh, but I totally get it.
well, okay, so I need to share this one interaction that I had, and it really gave me a lot to think about the whole weekend.
Wow.
Um, I don't know if these guys are listening. They're probably not
No.
because we just recorded our first episode and haven't
I
posted
mean,
anything
I'll
yet.
bet with you. I'm gonna say no.
Yeah.
Okay, at least not now.
Yeah.
Maybe if we're lucky, in 3 years they're gonna go back. It'd be like one of those things.
They'll probably have forgotten this.
Probably.
So we were at Union Bar at their block party, and it was kind of on the like late evening, early night period where the sun was still just slightly visible, as having an effect on the lighting of the night. And there was a long line of people waiting to get in.
It was a super long line there.
Yeah. We happened to go through their front entrance, like the one of the bar, and then like go back through where the bathrooms are, which by the way, lots of drunk queens very angry at us for trying to like leave the building that way. They're all like, "We have to pay too, you know." It's like, yeah, fuck you. I'm looking for the exit. So
I feel like that transports me to Pride.
yeah,
Wow.
but
Yes.
I also
Okay.
want to stay like thoughtful
Wait,
about.
was that the interaction? That was your story?
No, no.
Oh.
No.
I'm like, okay,
This is the
important.
appetizer to my story. um, yeah, but I would have been mad too if I was so ignorant as to think that the only reason people were shoving past like that on a heavy stream was so they could pee a heavy stream before me. But
I could see that. Yeah, lines, just line tension, line
yeah,
stress.
and everyone's a
It's
little bit
critical.
drunk. They've been a little bit too hot.
Yeah, that weekend.
Yeah. So we're standing in line, or sorry, we're not standing in line. We're watching the people who are standing in line because we like found a spot where there were fewer bodies and we weren't being jostled around as much. And so we're just kind of watching how long it takes before like a new like 2-3 person group is let in as the crowd is being managed. And there were these two guys. They were both like super hot, really fit. They look well fit, mate. They
Okay, I would have laughed, but I was drinking.
yeah,
Okay.
sorry. I was just trying to get him to spray that on the microphone. So they're both wearing kind of light gray, slim cut trousers. And one of them has like a really tight, like well cut black polo shirt. And the other one is short sleeve button down. Same thing, like painted on basically. And they both just look like really good. And when you like see them in proximity to like everyone else around who have lost at least a couple pieces of the clothing that they went outside with originally.
Yeah.
And there was like lots of beads and body paint and like thongs and jock straps. These two bros, who I use that term very affectionately, they're standing there and in like not a critically judgmental way, me and my partner Brian and Damien and Chris, two of our really good friends, we're standing there and I'm I don't know who said it, but one of us was like, are they like coming from a business conference? Because they looked so much nicer dressed than everybody and they were like put together and in a very different way than everybody around us who also looked fabulous and wonderful. And we were just kind of like laughing about like, yep, they are here from a business conference and they didn't, you know, wear booty shorts under their chinos.
Yeah.
And I laughed that, yeah, they were at like a bro team convention. And so these guys get let in and we'd already forgotten about staring at them. But apparently we'd stared at them hard enough and like made ourselves known that they walked over to us and they were like, hey, we noticed you looking at us and laughing. Was there something wrong? Or was something funny? And like, when I say that, it sounds like that could be a really uncomfortable confrontational moment.
Sounds uncomfortable.
Like, fuck, I just got called out. Like I imagine people feel if they get caught taking photos of other people on buses, which happens all the time. But they said it in a way that was just really non-judgmental. Like, it was just very friendly, but not... I don't know. They were getting to the bottom of it.
Yeah, where is this? Like, is this...
And so we just kind of, I think, all have this look on our face like, oh, fuck. And I was like, no, oh my God, no. just the fact that you are dressed so much better than anybody else here. Like,
Yeah.
we were just commenting that you were wearing a lot more clothing and it looked really put together. And they were like, oh, okay, well, we just came from a funeral.
Oh wow. Yeah.
And so it was like,
Yeah, like you kind of never
happy
know.
Pride, you handsome man.
Ooh. Pride after a funeral. That's an interesting mix of
Well,
emotions.
and of course, the thing that I'm
Mm.
sure all of our four listeners
Mm-hmm.
are thinking is, why wouldn't you just wear like a jock strap or booty shorts and a mesh singlet under your funeral
Oh yeah,
attire?
they're all thinking
And then you
that.
can like
Yeah.
change it in the
Of
Uber.
course. Of
Um,
course.
but they didn't, and that was their choice, and they hopefully had a wonderful night. Um, yeah, Union Bar was super fun.
That's great.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think we had amazing weather here this weekend too, so
it
that
wasn't too hot, but it didn't rain.
yeah.
Yeah, it was the perfect weather to be wearing not enough clothing, even on your stumble home around like midnight if
Yeah.
you're not into staying
Exactly,
out late.
yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, so
like
this
me.
it's like the stage is set, right, for like, a nice time kind of thing. Like
Yeah,
it's not like you're getting drenched or whatever. Um yeah, I mean, I think for me, I think I had a good weekend overall. Again, it's the Monday after. Every year for me, it's trying to manage multiple days of imbibing, right? So drinking, or now marijuana is legal here in Washington, so now smoking is kind of part of this mix too that people will do, or oh, maybe you'll have an edible while you do X event, like the street fair or something.
yeah,
So for me, it's just trying to kind of hang on, not get too burnt out. I tend to burn out party wise if I do even really 2 days in a row. The next day isn't quite as fun for me. I'm just kind of tired and everything.
Well, and in fact, when we were like texting like who was doing what when on Saturday, and some of us were going to Union earlier, Steven just straight up admitted like, if I start drinking now, it's gonna be over.
Yeah, and I mean,
Yeah,
it took me a long time to really, I mean, I guess own that. And I knew it before, sort of, but I had some pretty terrible years, terrible in quotes, where it's like, oh, I'll start drinking at 2, and I'm really in bed by 9. Like, I cannot make it. And then I talked to people, my whole family's actually like this. My whole immediate family, we can't really day drink. And yeah, so
that's probably
if it's
healthier for your
some,
overall
maybe,
health.
yeah, it's some kind of, physical, flaw, clearly. But
Yeah,
yeah, I think for me, I made it. I pretty much made it to Sunday, and I like to try to do some of the daytime parties here in Seattle. There are a lot of block parties and bars that will rent out the street, or kind of stake out the street and in front of them and have an outdoor space. So I made it to those. Really beautiful day, and I did not kind of push it too much. I think I ended up going home maybe at 6 or 7. So yeah, pretty good.
yeah,
Good for me too. Yeah, all pretty nice interactions, and yeah, some of the same, I guess kind of thoughts that you touched on there, Matthew. Like, oh, okay, how is this pride a little bit different than other ones in the past? I feel myself definitely getting older and consuming the parties that way, or just sort of thinking about it in a different way. I think I had a few years where I didn't really care at all about pride, anything, and I wouldn't say that it's super, super important to me. Whatever that means still, but now I think about it more like, hey, this is an important thing to do, sort of politically. It's a great time to reconnect with sort of friends that you don't see very often because they're all sort
yeah,
of down, and we've all, sort of like moved to the suburbs, some of us, and stuff like that. So, yeah, I had good interactions like that. That's
yeah.
nice too.
And I think that's actually an interesting point. Just like the things that it is still good for, even if you're a little bit past, like, I don't
Yeah.
know. I My perception is that a lot of people get involved in pride and get a lot out of it when they're kind of young into their gay life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we have a lot of privilege being able to live in this area and be like so visibly and conspicuously and openly gay, and having so little, like negativity
I
put
agree.
on
Yeah.
us. And so I just want to acknowledge that, like, right off the bat, like, this is an area that gays are loved. Although hate crime is up on Capitol Hill, that's just like a thing that I saw, a headline.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe we'll tweet about that if we can find that article.
Mm.
But like, so you really do have to still be careful. Something that I thought was really interesting was the parties that we went to. I really felt like there was a very heavy presence of security.
Yeah, that's
Um,
true.
and on one hand, like Handmaid's Tale, you start to feel like you're being policed and everything in this really weird,
Hmm.
why is there a security guy standing like in both corners of the windows looking down out of Grimm's like into the block party for Queer Bar?
Yeah.
Like they're keeping us safe. Yeah, because someone might burst in and start shooting, and that's like a legit thing we have to worry about
Hmm.
now. So, conflicted feelings.
Yeah.
I didn't feel unsafe at any point. Just want
No.
to put that out there.
Yeah, I didn't really either, but I will say this is before, we had this conversation obviously, but I was with some friends walking through the street fair portion. So on Saturday in Seattle, there, well, like one of the big shopping streets in, the gay-ish neighborhood is cleared of cars. They have a bunch of kind of fair and like vending booths and stuff. We were walking around there. We heard some balloons pop, and I thought it might be a gun at first.
That's just
And
where your mind goes
yeah,
now.
people around me thought that. And like, yeah, I don't want to make it sound like it was an overwhelmingly like scary weekend. That's not true at all. But
Well, I think it just reflects like where our
it
headspace
is, yeah, it
is.
is in the consciousness a little bit.
Yeah, like I have a lot of teachers in my family and immediate friend group. Like my mom, my brother, my uncle, uh, one of my best friends. The other one is getting his master's degree right now in it.
Hmm.
Like tons of teachers. My sister-in-law. I'm going to stop naming off people I know who are teachers. They all now live with this constant awareness that that might just be something that they deal with one day,
Hmm.
and people have contingency plans like about what they're going to do in the case. And one person that I have heard of, like three people removed, he basically said like if the school starts getting shot up, he's just gonna get himself home, like not worry about the
Wow.
kids. And you know what? I think the immediate reaction a lot of people have is
Yeah.
like, "Oh my god, what a how could he admit that? How would he not protect his students' lives?" Well, you know what? He's a dad with two kids and a wife. Like, why are other people's kids more valuable to him
Yeah.
than
Wow.
ensuring that he remained safe to provide and care for his family? Like,
It's just such a shame that you have to have the calculation at all or make that
yeah.
calculation.
And you have other people who, know that they're going to put their lives on the line to protect a student. I don't know, maybe I can't imagine that I'm that original in this, but I've had thoughts about, well, if somebody were to start shooting this public space, like what would I do? Where would be a place to hide?
Mm.
Where do you think you could maybe like tackle the shooter from? Like weird shit like that enters
Yeah.
my mind regularly. Maybe that's just because I'm paranoid or something.
Well, no, it's just I
It's
think,
not even a fear though. It's like,
yeah, it's just sort of where we are right now, unfortunately.
wow, so we were talking about pride and now we're like
Yeah,
we've really
deep
gone off
into
topic.
shootings. Okay, public shootings. Anyway, so
Yeah.
I think, yeah, I think it was good overall. I guess this year I thought a bit about how it compared to previous years for me.
In
Like I
what
guess we sort of
ways?
touched on,
Like what
so
metrics are you comparing?
so just telling people, oh, talking to some people, yeah, what do you typically do for Pride? And for me, I guess I didn't really have an answer to that. I was like, oh, well, I was traveling several years in a row and I just missed it.
Yeah.
Like last year, I'll try to go to friend events, but I don't really,
Do a lot
go
of
to
your
the.
friends have specific pride events?
Yeah, for some people, this is a party where they see people they know,
Hmm.
right? Or people they've known for a while. That's when they kind of check in,
Yeah.
right? During this sort of, this, festive weekend. And it's like,
Yeah.
day drinking kind of
Like it's
time, or
kind of
like out
cool
in the sun.
because
Yeah.
it almost becomes a point where it's like, well, sure, I haven't talked to these guys in a year or
Hmm.
so, but it's kind of like Christmas, where,
Yeah,
where
it's just
like
like
you send
socially.
out holiday cards, let everybody know how you're
Hmm.
doing. But in this particular case, it's all the gays like finding each other and checking in, saying
Hmm.
hi. It's jovial, and people are always very cheerful about it.
Yeah, so I think I like that aspect of it. And then in talking to my friends, we all have really different ideas, maybe, about what it is. I think for some people, it's just a crazy party gosh, why everyone's partying? I can't keep up with this kind of crazy, hookup weekend. But I think for me now it's
That's an
more of a,
experience that some people have.
well, yeah, and I think for me it was like that, right?
Yeah.
I think that's what I understood it to be. I was like, well, gosh, everyone's gonna be here. Like there are more people to meet. That's definitely an aspect. But I think
Yeah.
now it's more like, well, it's a great energy sort of. I think about it in that way where I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, these are all these people I never encounter.
Well, so that brings up something that I was wondering. Do you want to shift topic, or did you still have more you wanted to say about that?
No, I was just kind of rambling about this. No,
Okay. So where do these people come from? And I mean that, like, are they from Renton? Like, there's this huge community of people that we have. And last night with our friends, we were just kind of laughing about, like, I don't know most of these people.
Yeah.
And for some of us, that was because we haven't been as active in this scene in recent years. Like, we haven't been putting ourselves out there more.
Yeah.
We're also, like, pairing off and, like, in whatever form of relationships people are in. So things change. And I think that at least a couple people that we were spending the weekend with specifically noticed that they couldn't just like look into the crowd like they could in years past and just find like half of their friends. And that's not really something that I'd thought much about or an experience that I had. But I felt like I was hearing this almost like shocked, quasi insecure moment in people as they realized like they were slightly less connected to the scene. But I think that the other side of that is that perhaps that just means that we have even more people here, that there's even more people who are able to access this, that our circles are not so small anymore. I know that the suburbs of this area, King County, Washington, I'm sure that some of you have similar situations where you're listening from, but we have lots of little cities that surround Seattle, and it's pretty easy to get here. And I just wonder, like, how many people come from some of our more distant areas so they can be part of like this really cool, really like safe Pride event in Seattle.
Yeah, and I think so. I've lived here for the past 10 years or so, but I think about this maybe from a comparison to the Midwest sort of frame. Like for me, I always sort of think on Pride, okay, these are people who don't often come out, or is it that this place is liberal enough that people don't really need the bar or sort of the more conventional meeting spaces for gay people because it's liberal enough, right? So this is something they come to every so often. Maybe they do live here. And I mean, more and more, like, people ask how often I go out. I'm like, oh yeah, I go out all the time, sure. I go out quarterly at this point. Like, I rarely go out.
Yeah.
So I'm like, wait, I'm one of them probably.
You and I are definitely like a subset of gay men who like do not thrive on that.
Yeah. So, but still, I guess I just feel like, from that time when I was doing that more, I would know more people.
Yeah. But that's part of that privilege that I was talking about before. Like my second ex was from Dallas. He grew up in a suburb of Dallas.
Okay.
And he used to say that the gay scene down there was so much better. Like the gay bars were fun. Like this totally different attitude and community. And up here, we're able to just exist. Like I was saying before. So the gays are not that motivated to create and carve out these zones that are just okay for them to like have a beer together.
Yeah.
We can do that anywhere that we want. So I wonder if perhaps that creates a kind of community where the sort of groups that are really like meeting and getting together in these queer spaces, I wonder if they're a little bit more like niche subculture. Because like the whole city appreciates gayness in general, even though hate crime is up. And does that mean that then like I was just listening actually to a recent episode of Gayish Podcast, my favorite podcast that I listen to all the time.
Other people's names.
Yeah. Okay. So shout out to Mike and Kyle. But they were talking about the pup subculture. subculture. I don't. Sorry, I want to be very respectful about this because it's something that I had no idea really like what it meant in our broader gay community. I've obviously seen it when I've been out at bars. I've shopped at Doghouse. I've seen all the stuff. It's not something that has ever particularly like given me a feeling of community, or nothing clicked for me.
Yeah.
So listening to them talk with, I think his name was Kiro, this cool guy who they had on, it was so educational, and it was so interesting to hear about what his culture is all about in the gay community, and the intersectionality between like the puppy play and his being like a deaf gay man, and like totally cool just being able to learn about this. And I feel like that might be something that Seattle does really well, is that we are able to have all these things. We recently had a really disturbing story that involved like murder and illegal cosmetic injections and polyamory,
which is like maybe its own discussion that would be very complex.
Yeah, like and again, like this is not my community either, so I come at this from a complete outside position, but I feel for sure that it sucks to be in that community when that's the story that's being shared about you, because that is not reflective of the majority of people who are into like polyamory or like.
Oh, okay, and we're back.
So
listen, we're both new to this.
We just did the podcast equivalent of calling someone and then stepping on an elevator.
Yeah, so, and listen, I don't know why Matthew thought I was supposed to plug this in, okay? But I'll
might be able to hear the dulcet
and you guys can take sides.
So much better.
Yeah. Okay. What were you saying?
I was talking about that botched cosmetic
it was going to be
injection.
Complex, and
basically like a guy from Australia died.
Yeah. So how about this? What would you... I don't know. Is there anything that you wish were different about not just like your pride, but like pride in general or something?
Okay, this is... I've been stewing on this like since last night when Chris and I decided that we were done with being out. I feel like there is so much, I don't know, judgmental quality to perhaps how gay men interact with one another. And everybody has a feeling about this. Everyone has been ghosted. Everybody ghosts. And I don't think that that's necessarily bad, but I think that we just don't treat each other with as much respect as we deserve as human beings. This is a topic that everybody has something to say about, so I don't want to dive into it too much. But
if you think about it, I think this does kind of capture the pride experience in some ways. If you think about it, you guys were there on a Sunday night, right? At this party that you paid for, right? At this bar, like, hey... And then you're having these thoughts. You're like, I wish people were, nicer to each other. And I'm not even mocking it. I'm just saying this to be really transports me to the bar on a Sunday night after a long Pride.
And I'm not even saying that anybody was mean. Like, it's not like there was a particular encounter that left me feeling bitter. There was the one that made me feel positive as we were laughing about some people.
I thought that was not going to go that direction at all.
Yeah, so. I'm actually really proud of how that whole thing went down. Whereas we went to this like dance party that was supposed to be a lot of fun, and we all got all like slutty dressed up for it. And, I'm sure that everybody has body insecurity. And nobody is particularly, like, being judgy, but there's just something that I do not enjoy about anymore, about, like, putting on a harness and a jock strap and, like, dancing in a room, like, with a vodka cran. Because that is what fueled me through
What
Pride.
in particular would you not like about that? I'm joking.
Like, the number one thing was that I feel like I have a decent amount of like body positive self-esteem, etc. I think everybody has hang-ups and issues with that, But like I have gone from being like a very slender distance runner to almost a little bit chubby, and that's totally fine. I don't mind that myself, and I feel like a good healthy person. But I can't ever be in a room of tons of unclothed people like this dance party. And honestly, they represented a huge variety of body shape. And you really do get to see in those spaces like the positivity that people bring to it, the just you get to see how every body is beautiful in ways that you don't really think about typically. I don't know if this is fair to say, but I think that there is a wider diversity of what beautiful can be in women than for a lot of men. And I think that I am lucky to be a white man, because I think that there are a lot of people who get judged on their looks far more harshly for not having that particular identity. And the fact that we're so image and identity focused in the gay community then kind of makes it feel uncomfortable. And so on one hand, you're dancing in a room with tons of guys who look like everything that a guy can look like, and you get to see really cool interactions, people who like appreciate one another, and they're all turned on, but then like I am not. I'm like standing there dancing, like thinking, when do I get to go home? Light up a bowl and like watch some anime, because Brian's been making me watch a lot of anime recently, and we got very into this one series that was a much more fun way to spend the evening.
Which one?
I'm gonna butcher the name.
Okay. But I totally get that, though, right? It's like you wanna,
Hero.
especially
it's
after
about Shield Hero.
Okay.
Anyway,
but yeah, you know, actually, you know, after all of that, you want to tuck in for sure. And really, for me, I was there with one, you know, a friend. We were kind of like, it was a bit a bigger group, but kind of, you know, buddies, kind of like holding each other's beers and stuff. And I was like, well, okay, you know, hey, how do you feel? You know, you sort of test the waters. You're like, well, you want to go home? I mean, it would feel nice to, I'm like, how about we go get food?
Yeah.
Something that could give you definitely might not come back from.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and
we sat there sort of being like, okay, is this acceptable? Can we leave at 5? They're like, oh no, well, we should like try to make it to 5:30.
Yeah. You know? Well, Chris and I were both feeling like chubby, unattractive, like people who were just dancing in the margins. We specifically like sought out the part where there was a fan so that we were like not boiling because that room was so hot.
And that's interesting to hear that, because I just think you guys went
Chris has so much confidence, and like I always assumed. So the fact that he was having those same mental hangups, you know, it's stigma once again. Like everybody wants to feel like they can walk into a room and be like, yeah, this is who I am and this is what I look like, and I'm going to dance my ass off and have a great time. But like just because you look like that from the outside doesn't mean that inside you're not like, oh my god, my abs aren't as nice as that guy's, because there's always going to be someone whose abs are nicer than that guy's, because I think the truth is everybody has a different thing that they're looking for when it comes to those qualities, and nobody can appreciate what they necessarily have.
Yeah, and you know, this is, you know, everything that everyone feels, right? But it's like just something about, you know, pride and sort of maybe the nudity where you're sort of, you're confronted with it.
Like,
you know, maybe. I do feel like, you know, we said that about, you know, men having this narrow definition. I think that a lot of women would feel like that, you know,
I'm sure that we all feel that way.
Like, we all do. I just want to sort of acknowledge that.
The pressure is a lot higher on women for, like, fucking everything.
Yeah.
But, like, gay men, it's pretty close, right?
But, well, I mean, I just think that, you know, it certainly feels like that, right? Yeah. Sometimes, and I think it,
but a straight man can, like, throw on whatever the fuck he wants, and it's fine. But I don't know if gay men feel comfortable doing the same thing always.
Well, see, and I feel like that's, I mean, that
we joke
level
about Steven being that himself.
I'm trying. Just like I am striving for that level of non-effort, which I don't know if that's a good goal, but you know, it's like
Steven wants non-effort, and meanwhile, like I wore a chambray romper that I think was like awful for my body on Saturday.
I thought you looked good in it.
I was,
but then
so
you were like,
but I'm sitting there
you
like,
said that before I even got there. You're like, it doesn't, and I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna, you know, you're not gonna like.
But
whatever. I've known you a long time. I'm not going
romper.
to be like, hey, no, you look good. You look good. Like,
Yeah.
no. Like,
And I don't want that kind of affirmation.
Yeah,
but that was my own personal thing of like, I don't feel like I look in the mirror and see what I want to look like in this, but I still wore it out because I liked it.
And for me, I'm at this point where like
something. What's the Ariana Grande?
Yeah, no,
I liked it. I wanted. I bought it.
Yeah,
we're not very good gays when it comes
that.
to Okay. This is what Chris, our absent friend.
But I think you. No, I mean, yeah. What? Okay. What were you going for?
The whole
you know what I mean? With this, not with that specific look or something, but you're like, oh hey, I'm gonna buy stuff for Pride. It's just like I want to look good because I mean, just for me, like I remember I was counseling Chris.
I looked at it. I was just thinking about it from a stance of like, what are some ways that I can be fun and festive and celebrate men's fashion in a way that I don't in my daily?
Okay, totally.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a totally. I mean, I'm not looking for any
but I
particular
think about
answer,
like,
but it's just
like people whose fashion I really like admire. Billy Porter is awesome. He's able to wear some of the most like outlandish looks, and he just gives it this panache and this flair that I respect a lot.
So I'm asking for the audience. Who's Billy Porter? I don't know who that is either.
Yeah, that's okay. Sorry, audience. I realize that not everybody might not be me.
I definitely.
So Billy Porter is a actor and just like all around talented person. I think he's probably done Broadway, but most people know him from Pose and from his red carpet appearances in this last year. He has worn some extravaganza, serving, all of that shit. If you've seen the show Pose, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But he's able to mix in like these hyper, like punchy colors and feminine forms and textures and textiles, and also like bring in some menswear appeal.
Yeah.
You kind of see like this really interesting like gender queering in a lot of young male celebrities right now, like Timothée Chalamet and the others.
Really many, I think, people.
Yeah. And, whether that's Harry Tomlinson.
Well, I was going to say, the people from that band.
Yeah, like all of them love fashion. And, Zayn had his... Actually, Zayn is who I used as, hair inspiration when I had longer hair, because he always had cool ways of, kind of twisting it into, a man bun, but elevated. Bun, but make it fashion. So one thing that I did this year is I went and I got a manicure on Saturday morning with one of my really close friends, and it was a nice little ladies' morning where we went and got talked about by the women doing our nails, and I already chipped 4 of this. Yeah, but anyway,
it seems it's a lifestyle. It seems like
yeah, it is definitely
having nails you have to be careful with.
Yeah, if you dig around in potting soil and pumice, that is not good for your fingernails.
That's a future episode idea, right? What kind of gardening do you do right after a manicure? Okay, you need to look good next week.
That's when you individually tape cotton balls over each of your fingers and use cashmere gardening gloves.
And you're handling air plants only.
Yeah, okay, and these are all available on goop.com.
We're kidding.
Don't go there. She's bad.
We're kidding?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe they are.
Yeah. Anyway. Yeah, but so what I wanted to do this weekend with my looks was just kind of celebrate things that I wouldn't normally do. So I got my nails done. I put on a little bit of eyeliner. I'm actually pretty comfortable with using colored eyebrow pomade. So I just kind of punched up those looks a little bit, and my hair is freshly platinum blonde. But I think this is the last time that I'm going to be touching up the roots. I think I'm done 2 years of platinum, and I miss my nice, soft, beautiful, luscious chestnut hair. Yeah, I went from having
I like your description of your hair.
Yeah, I have a hard on for the hair that I cut off and then dyed bleached. Anyway, but
no, well that I can relate to that, and I think it's just kind of understanding where people are coming from. I tend to think of it more on that level now. Sort of, I think of that myself as sort of post judgment of my youth or something, being oh, that person's doing, why are they it's oh, okay, what are you enjoying about this?
And that's what I love about these queer spaces during Pride, is that you just get to see people really explore who they are in a way that's not their daily expression.
Uh-huh.
And there's of course the joke that like gays can wear whatever the fuck they want during Pride, and you can't make fun of them. And so you see people wearing like everything, and you don't make fun of them because like that's awesome that tiny little boy or that tiny little G-string is dancing his tiny little ass off. Yeah.
Yeah, and and maybe this sounds like a contrast or something, but I don't think it is. Like, I remember, our friend, we have a mutual friend who was saying, like, oh gosh, yeah, like, what should I wear? And I mean, I was doing the same thing, with like my same, 10 shirts or whatever, but I'm like, okay, you know what? When in doubt, just wear the thing you always wear.
Well,
and I feel like he likes that advice. I mean, I can ask him like later, but I feel like that's kind of where I'm at.
That's exactly what he did. He wore exactly what he normally wears.
Because I'm like, I'm just like, okay, I want to like feel sort of good in this.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hey, at least maybe in the past, I guess I have to think this through, but in the past when I've had something that I'm planning to wear, or like, oh, I better get us something so I can look really good for the X. I'm like, well, do I really relate to that? Am I like...
Like, what's an example piece of clothing that you buy to look really good for the X?
I don't know. Okay, well,
and are we talking the like, just X we don't have a value for, or do you mean X, the EX?
Oh, no, I mean like, X that we don't have a value for.
You want to look hot for people who have ghosted you.
No, but I'm saying like, this is sort of... Okay, in my head, I'm like, oh, this is kind of remarkable. Or I'm like, oh, this is a little bit more daring than I would typically wear.
But like, what is this piece of clothing that you're imagining?
Okay, I have a couple of them, all right? I have a couple of them that I haven't worn, all right? And this was not planned, okay? We need to stick to a script next time for these podcasts because there's a lot of vulnerability, okay? So I have this really pretty cool shirt that was from American Apparel originally. And I don't know if when they were still, existing. I have one that just is kind of a cool 80s looking shirt, and it's just a little bit tighter than I would normally wear kind of thing. So I feel like I'm like, oh, well, I would kind of want to be in good shape for it, or I would kind of want like maybe this context of like Pride and everyone's wearing like whatever kind of daring thing they want to wear.
Yeah, but I think if you wore anything with tight sleeves, like people would be into that.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Like you would say that, and I walk to you and I'm like, okay, what's wrong with this like
Steven doesn't realize that people like really like his arms. That's a conversation topic among my friends.
What?
Steven's just now learning this.
Okay, we can edit all of this out.
If I mention Steven,
I'm gonna just put another audio track on top of it.
They might just be like, you mean Steven with the arms?
What?
Yeah, that's how Rudy
described. Is that really true? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so Matthew can kind of carry the rest of this episode, and I'm gonna go sort of like, maybe I'm gonna go journal about this and just be like, what?
Oh.
But okay, I mean, that's good, right? But it's like... What I was gonna say is like, I think we kind of have these images of ourselves, right? Or we had these feelings, and hey, those are totally valid. And I think for me, what feels true for me is I'm like, okay, getting the core of like, hey, just like whatever made you feel good.
Yeah.
You and you, or like remember the everyday you. Or at least that helps me, right? And again, that would not be to say like, don't wear the romp hem or something. But then I think if it were me, if I were stressing, I'd be like, oh, no stress, blah.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if that's aspirational.
You want to know the really funny thing about the romper?
What?
It turned my body blue.
Okay.
It was like...
You did tell me the price. It was alarmingly low. Okay, you said. And I'm just like, this seems like kind of like a big piece, right?
I found it on Amazon, and I wanted to get like a linen one, but those were going to take weeks to ship. And, like, I was actually even looking for one, like, at the beginning of June, thinking, like, that would be a cute thing that I wanted to do for Pride for the last few years.
Okay.
And so I got this one instead of a nice linen one. And it was chambray. Okay. But it was, like, a real cheap price, like, suspiciously low. And it turns out that, like, it fit fine, but I have, like... an average sized torso for my height.
Oh, so, God, yeah, you'd have to think about that with that kind of clothing.
And, this was definitely designed for someone with a much shorter torso than me, because
Okay, see, I did not notice this at all right, I didn't give you like an up and down inspection maybe, but okay, this is funny how we experience these different
like
sides of
this whole last hour. I don't know how long it's been. This is just to say that, like, you don't know what's going on in your own head versus what's reality.
sometimes you don't even know if you're recording, right?
And we still seem to be.
Phew.
Yeah. But then big difference though for me the second night. I don't know if it was just that my antidepressants were doing better the first night, but I wore like a jock strap with some booty shorts over them with the intention of like using the clothes check that they had at this party, and a harness and a black mesh tank top that I actually just wore all day, including when we had the rejuvenation brunch. Remember when we talked about that?
No. Oh, the brunch.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like, wait, what, we wore to the brunches? I was like, no.
No, this was at the beginning of the episode. And then I wore like a little white handkerchief. So it was like a very black and white look. And because I've got like dark beard, but white hair and like heavy eyebrows and all that, like I liked it. I liked how I looked. But then I got out and I just didn't like how I looked anymore. And like it was fine, but...
And part of me feels like I would relate to this more if I just were more sort of daring or adventurous fashion-wise. I guess I felt like that a few times, but then instead of like pushing it, I tend to be like, you know, like I just described. I'm like, what do you usually wear? And
well, do you ever feel boring that way? Do you ever like wish that you'd worn something more exciting?
No.
Well, then it works for you.
And I say no, I'm like... Wait, should I? No, but
Steven's
I guess
going to now worry about this next time.
Or no, for me, I feel like I thought about this like maybe 15 years ago and sort of explained it to myself this way then, where I was like, oh, well, I'm not really somebody who wears their expression in the same way. I was like, oh, and then I was thinking like, should I get more graphic tees that say like, hello, fuck you, or something? And I was just like, no, I don't need to say it. I guess I just don't relate to that.
You could have gotten those when you lived in Japan, and they just have like the really weird translations.
You could have bought them off the shelf, yes.
Yeah.
And I could have worn them.
It's like, hello, hamburger, I am your friend.
Yeah, and that would be pretty normal,
Yeah.
actually.
One of my
So,
favorite kind of
wow.
BuzzFeed lists are when they just have like badly translated things that are hilarious.
Yeah, so I mean, but I don't know, this is something maybe I should think about. I mean, because I do think it's good to, you know, push yourself in different ways, right? And for me, I think it is good to be more open. That's kind of something that I work on over time. I'm like, oh, be more open and sort of vulnerable and accessible and kind of all
But that
those
might not
things.
look the same to everybody.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, oh, what does that mean for me? Through clothes, at least, I haven't really found that. And I actually, you know, I enjoy sort of talking about fashion and thinking about it, but somehow on me, it's not like how I experience it for some reason. But yeah, anyway, pride issues, okay? Oh, look at all this stuff it dredges up.
Yeah. I mean, that's really the thing about, like, being gay. I think that there's something funny about kind of thinking of that as an identity that's in any way universal, because it transcends gender and culture and nationality and age.
Oh,
it,
yeah,
like,
I see what you're saying.
you know,
Yeah.
anybody can be LGBTQ+. And so because of that, you know, of course, there are 1,000 different degrees of how any topic can be observed or experienced or felt. And, like,
Yeah.
we're all dealing with these things.
And I think when I think about it, I'm like, oh, you know, sometimes of course it's like it is a commonality between people, but I think there's this mistaken assumption sometimes that it's a very specific, like developed type of thing that we have in common.
Yeah.
Which you know, you could just go on your first like 5 like coffee dates from a dating site, right? To realize that you're like, oh, really? All that we have in common is that we kind of like the same sex, maybe, right?
Yeah.
And it's like after that,
I think that's
it's
one of the
not
hard
like-
things about, like, being queer and dating people of the same gender as you. You don't really necessarily know, if you're fairly new into this especially, is this a friendship? Is this, like, a sex friend? Is this a romantic connection?
Yeah.
Like, there's all these different ways that you can know another person, and I would imagine that for straight people, you have options and you don't have options. and it streamlines it. But you might have a gym buddy that's like more than a gym buddy to you, but it's not.
It happens all the time in the straight world, right?
Yeah, like
that girl gym buddy.
Well, we've at least seen porns about it.
Oh, true.
Yeah.
Yeah, most porn.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, for me, I used to think about it a lot, like in the senses that, like, I thought gay people didn't have, I would call it like conventional wisdom to draw on, like straight people did. And this is maybe
there's less
5 or 10
cultural narrative history.
Yeah, less. This is like 5 or 10 years ago. Me would say like, oh, you know, for guys and girl, you know, like for a married couple, straight married couple, it's like there's these conventions like girls' night is built into like our culture, kind of. Where like girl, it's like, hey, this is where our culture gets separate. Like we don't have that. I can't necessarily ask my grandma how, you know, dating men go. Like we don't have the same sort of access.
Yeah.
And it's not, that's actually good in some ways, right? But I felt like when I was trying to figure out relationships, especially earlier on, I'm like, God, what do I draw
What examples
from?
would you draw from?
I just have to figure this out. I was like...
I think that, well, I would hope that gay kids today have a lot more visibility in those ways. Because I remember when I was, you know, young and aware but not aware of being aware that I was gay, I just didn't see any examples of anything that felt like myself.
Really didn't. Yeah, it was. I mean, everyone talks about the importance of this, right? And I feel like in that way, I really kind of feel that.
Which, and I have to admit, like I've been painting my nails more recently. Like that's not really been a thing that I've done, but I think that's a cool way to be like a little bit transversive of like whatever the expectations for maleness. And if I'm at a coffee shop and a little kid sees me with my manicure and a latte, that might make them feel better about something that they're confused in. And I think that when I look back to my childhood, there was like one gay teacher at the elementary school that I went to who was on the same like grade team as my mom. She was also a teacher there. And just knowing him was really nice because it was basically the only example of like the kind of gay guy that I think I could have imagined myself being. And it was like as much admiration as thinking he was like attractive, but he was a good example. And I don't think that that is something that we can take for granted. And I really hope the kids now have a lot more of that.
Yeah.
So that's also one of my motives for being a little bit more queer in what I wear sometimes.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of like reclaiming something. So we have explored this a lot longer than we intended. We thought we were just going to like chat for 30 minutes about how our pride went, but there's a lot more to be discussed here. So I'm going to slip into my anthropology mind for a moment because this is what I actually wanted to talk about. I would like to know how people feel going into pride versus coming out of it. Like in my head, I just have pictured this little queer person from Maple Valley who comes to Seattle Pride. They're feeling great about being able to attend an event like this, seeing the inclusion that we were discussing, being around other people, feeling that community support and love. Do they go home feeling like empowered and refreshed? Do they go back and like, there was that tweet about watching kids going home on the subway from Pride events, like taking off their face paint and like removing their rainbow apparel so that on the walk from the bus station to wherever they live.
I've seen those,
Yeah, like how is it? Pride is good. Everybody needs to like have the visibility and acceptance, but there has got to be something that is not being written about in places that I'm reading about if pride has like a harmful thing that we can do some kind of societal, cultural, like social work to help minimize the impact. So like I came off of yesterday feeling like a fat fuck, even though like I shouldn't feel that way, but I was pretty like grumpy after we got home and it took basically to like smoking a bowl just now, that I haven't been feeling very positive about myself. Huh. And I think that that is an experience that I cannot possibly be alone in. And I know many people who always feel rejected in the gay community. Like tons of people that you chat with on Scruff or Grindr make reference to like getting ghosted, or like, oh yeah, is this going to be one of those chats that's great and I never hear from you again? Being ghosted. Why do we treat ourselves like that? Like, why do we treat each other in a way that none of us are really consciously being dicks, but we kind of leave each other feeling that way sometimes? Are we aware of it when we do? Is there a way that we can have better harm reduction knowing what these pitfalls are? Like, if I know that when I go out I'm going to feel body conscious, should I go to the gym more? Should I eat fewer cookies? Yes. But, like, should I also just do, like, some mental work about, like, everybody's beautiful, and you look at people in this room, and you think that tons of them are handsome regardless of what they look like. Why would you not put yourself to that same, like, kinder level of scrutiny than you do yourself when you look in a mirror? I don't know.
So, and yeah, for me, I think that, you know, like, of course I'm sympathetic to that, right? I just feel like with Pride, how is that any different than so many of these other weekends, right?
Because I think that this is specifically one
it's about to bodies.
Celebrate. Yeah, like a lot about gayness does have to do with bodies. There's a whole culture just around that, and I don't think that's negative necessarily. I think it can be, it can have negative effects, but I think that health and fitness are really important for people, both mentally and physically.
Yeah, and so I, you know, for myself too a little bit, I'm like, well, so I was thinking, okay, I want to try to get really in shape before Pride. And that for me was like, oh, I should start running.
What percentage of our listeners are like that? Raise your hand if you like try to go on a Pride diet.
Yeah, and then I found, exactly, and I found myself being like, really? For that?
Yeah.
Why? But then I'm like, you know what? It's any arbitrary whatever.
Yeah.
This is just to try to get really active again and try to do this. And so, I mean, it was overall, it felt positive. And then it was like, oh, was I taking my shirt off? I mean, no, like I don't really do that, and so it wasn't like, oh.
Well, it sounds like you.
But it still felt good actually. Yeah. To like have that, and then I sort of know that like, oh, I made some like progress, but then I didn't go to that party. You know what I mean? Like, and then this weekend I felt like,
miss out.
Yeah. So like, but I kind of felt like this weekend, I'm like, oh, I saw these groups of friends. I felt like I saw a lot of people from out of town, which are a little bit different this year. Which sort of makes sense, I guess, with how
I felt like
West
Scruff
Coast
had a lot of
like
people from Portland.
Yeah, or maybe people doing this kind of tourism for these things, which is cool. But
well, and a lot of the cities seem to stagger it so you can go to multiple ones when there's a buck to be made.
Yeah, but yeah, that's an interesting sort of takeaway, because for me, I would tend to sort of pin less on the gay community. Mm-hmm. And not that I'm right and I can necessarily back it up, but it's like, I think, okay, maybe it has a little less to do with the gay community. It has more to do just with like, you know, it's going to sound dark, like the pain of the human transaction, right?
I love that expression.
People hurt each other. So this is maybe like a bit more of like a worldview that I would have, but I'm just saying.
From now on, I'm just casually going to like talk about like the pain of the human.
Yeah, it is. It's like, think about it. We reject each other all the time. We're constantly rejecting each other. You know what I mean? So it's like, I get used to this, like, hey, this is a process of destruction, right? Well, we are rejecting each other 30 times a day.
And
we're
honestly,
accepting too.
It's
but it's
so
like,
exhausting to not reject some people, though. Like, Damien was making fun of me because at our Pride event on Saturday, we were like hopping back and forth between a couple different places. And Damien thought it was hilarious that I made it this deliberate mission to find and say goodbye to every person that we had said hi to while we were there.
Because I looked at my one friend, for contrast, my one friend that was kind of holding my beer, and I'm like, oh, so this was daytime. People were still like sober-ish. And we were like, okay, can we leave? We're like, we can just Irish goodbye this. We just left. Okay, we left. The people had just given us a lot of bacon. Yeah. Okay, at their party, everything. I said nothing. We just left, and I don't know if I've texted them yet. It's more than 24 hours.
Hopefully they're still alive.
Meanwhile, you were hugging everyone you met.
Okay, well,
and...
the only reason that I was doing this was because this was like the first bit of our going out. This was the first time that we left the first block party.
Okay.
Like, everyone was still sober. Like, people were having a good time. We had recently been introduced to, like, several, like, close friends. So there was, like, that kind of element. And, like, as the night goes on and people get drunker and I have less patience, like, yeah, I'll just, like, say goodbye to anybody who happens to look at me. But, like, if I can get out without them doing that, like, it's just...
Yeah.
I don't want to say Irish goodbye because...
Oh, I'm sorry to all the Irish who, are really big on goodbyes or
we
whatever.
Don't know and we can't claim. So...
No. Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah. I think that what I just did was throw out a lot of hypothetical questions that were almost rhetorical, and I have no answers on any of them.
That's right. We produced questions that maybe were questions, no answers really.
So,
so we had some musings.
If you have thoughts, maybe reach out.
Yes.
Because since we're brand new, we've just started. This is our second episode, and in fact, I think that instead of calling this episode 2 of Plant Daddies, I think we need to call this Plant Daddies Off-Topic Self-Therapy.
Yes. And if we're gonna call it that, then I'm gonna get, I'm gonna start crying routinely.
So we'll get the recycled paper tissues. So
and again, yes, send us your questions that we can answer with questions.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Or answer our questions.
Yeah. And you may hear from us, maybe not. I might just leave.
Yeah. If you're too harsh, this might just be the end.
But Matthew would thank you.
Stephen was already having trouble hearing his voice when we were doing the audio testing. Because hearing your own voice is weird.
Yeah. So we'll talk about that in a future episode.
Yeah. But anyway, happy Pride.
Yeah, happy Pride recovery.
I hope everybody stayed safe and had a nice, good time. Something that was really amazing that touched me was that they had the most people at the Trans Visibility March this year. I actually was not able to be part of that because
I know a lot of people who participated actually. Yeah.
Yeah, and the rugby team that Brian plays for was doing it. I just thought that was the coolest thing because that's such a huge topic right now that there is so much controversy that is like really ridiculous because it's just a type of person who exists.
Yeah, no, it's good that the rugby team did that. I think they're very sort of active in Seattle, so that's cool.
Yeah, this is the Seattle Quake Rugby. They are a gay team with a lot of straight ally players. I assume they're all allies. They're all cool guys. I like them all. But they try to be really visible and supportive in the community for just any kind of inclusion and really modeling progressive values, which is exactly the spirit of our podcast and of Pride Week, which thank God we're off of because now, I don't know if you've heard on the internet, but after Pride Month comes Wrath Month. Have you heard about this, Stephen?
Okay, Wrath Month.
Wrath. Because it's one of the deadly sins, like pride.
Okay. Oh, God. Okay. Yeah. I was thinking, like, this is like RATH and it's going to stand for something.
Yeah, so I've seen a number of things about what Wrath Month are. And so as we close out this podcast, I want you to think about what that's going to mean to you to have Gay Wrath Month. Because a lot of people online seem to be saying that it is... First, all of the pride for who you are and who you love, and then it's anger for all the years that has been taken from our community and that those words have been erased from our histories. Because when you think about the amount of gay culture that has been lost, it is recurringly destroyed when things like Nazis happen. Yeah, I can't remember the name of it, but we'll tweet out about basically like this library of gender and sex science and studies that was burned in Berlin, I believe.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Anyway.
So yeah, maybe next time we'll have settled into our anger and we can talk about it.
Yeah. But yeah, so this has been an episode of the Plant Daddies podcast. Actually, it's Plant Daddy podcast.
We're going to get that right though, okay?
Yeah.
Bear with us.
Yeah. There are two daddies. but this is the Plant Daddy podcast.
Yes.
We're going to edit a lot of this out.
I'm sure.
But yeah, so thank you for listening, and please come with some rhetorical answers to our rhetorical questions.
Oh, please.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks a lot. Have a good week.
Bye.